Hello everyone, welcome to Digital Sound for Games. I am Robbie Duguay. This is week 12 happening in week 11. I am speaking to you from the past, people of the recording listening in the future, but we're also giving you slides from the future which you have not yet experienced. Yes. Yeah. Total mind trip. We're doing good. Yeah. Hi Cody. Yeah. Hello Robbie of the future. Okay, so reminders and announcements that are not yet applicable. The Foley that we're going to record next week will be available for you the week after or right away in Slate. Blah, blah, blah. Final exam is on week 13, which is next week in the future, but 2 weeks from now in the past. Week 13, that is your second last week of class. It is currently now week 11. Yes. And then the assignment is due at the beginning of the last class here together, week 14. So let's do a mega huge review of all the things you should have learned and the things that you have yet to learn. What is the definition of sound design?
The process of acquiring, manipulating, generating, or something audio.
The process of acquiring, manipulating, specifying, acquiring, manipulating, or generating audio. Specifying, acquiring, manipulating, generating. Great. What are the 5 main categories of game audio with which we have discussed in this class? Someone who's not Dylan.
Foley, music, UI, character, dialogue, and environment audio.
Nailed it. UI, music, characters and dialogue, environment, and Foley. Why do we use variations of sound effects? To avoid sound effect fatigue, yes. We also do so to make sounds more believable, to sound like the real world, and to add polish. But mostly it's to avoid sound effect fatigue. And later in today's tutorial, lecture, whatever, I'm going to show you how to have those variations in Fmod used properly. How important is it to consider sound effect fatigue? Very important. It is always the most important. Great. What's the most important part about creating a loop? That it loops seamlessly, correct. You make it as seamless as possible. What is the difference between original music and licensed music?
Original music is one you create, licensed is one you pay for.
Original music is created specifically for a project. Licensed music is pre-existing, and you pay for the right to use it in your project.
Yes.
An example of original music would be like Ocarina of Time. An example of licensed music would be like Rock Band. Ocarina of Time, Koji Kondo wrote, Gerudo Valley. And Rock Band, Beatles Rock Band, the Beatles wrote their music without Rock Band in mind, I'm pretty sure. Okay, and a quick note on this, which one is better than the other? Yeah, trick question, neither. They're the same. Depends on the use. What is the Ni no Kuni battle theme a good example of? We talked about this after the exam if you came back. So, Ni no Kuni. Oh, this is great. This is a good excuse. So, Ni no Kuni is a wonderful game that has really, really good music that is horribly implemented in the game. Yeah, I love going on rants about this. I forgot that you skipped it, or you skipped it. I skipped it because I was at PAX. So, it's got this battle theme that goes dun 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 dun, like over and over again. And the song itself, if it was in a film, would have a really nice arc of like the battle is starting, here's the bad guy, the fight is getting more difficult, and then I win. But because it's an RPG and it happens in random battles over and over and over again, and you only hear the first 15 seconds of that song over and over and over again, you never break out of the introduction of the battle theme. So it's a very good example of good composition with poor implementation. So things that they could have done to make this better, they could have come up with multiple battle themes, because there's only one throughout the whole game. Like there's a different one for bosses, but for normal battles, there's one theme. 2 variations of that theme that start from the same point and have a similar instrumentation. They could have started the song from a different part. They could have had different starting points within the same file. They could have done a lot of stuff. Anyway, they just start the same song from the same point every battle, and it gets annoying. Almost like sound effect fatigue, you get music fatigue. Can silence be used in audio design? Yes, it is a great tool for emphasis. That's a great GIF. What kind of interface did early consoles use to write music? trackers. Correct. What made the NES sound chip notable? What was the important part about the sound chip that nobody else had? It had a sample channel. Correct. Whoop, I went back by accident. Who made the music for Super Mario World? That one guy. Someone else. Dowd. Koji Kondo. Very good. And what allowed, there are two concepts, what allowed games to progress from built-in sound chips on the console to full sampled audio in a game? I want to get someone who's, yeah.
Increase in maximum storage space and compression.
Right, the advent of audio compression and an increase in storage space. Good, let's do some more review. Haha, this is a picture from Amplitude. What is amplitude? It is the strength or the amount of a signal, yes, whether it be sound or vibration. When we look at a waveform, the height of that waveform is its amplitude. What is frequency? Dylan.
A number that represents the amount of times a signal cycles per second.
Signals cycling per second, yes. What is the threshold for hearing damage in decibels? 85. Yes. What is the difference in volume between, oh, I totally messed up this slide. Pretend that says between 60 decibels and 70 decibels. What's the difference in volume between 60 decibels and 70 decibels, besides the obvious 10 decibels?
Double, right? Is it double?
It is 10 times louder. Yes. Didn't see that one coming.
Wait, so is 61 double?
No, it's supposed to be 7. You made a mistake.
So I made a mistake. It should be between 60 and 70. I don't know how math works. Don't ask me how logarithmic scales work. I just know that 70 is 10 times louder than 60. And that makes 80 100 times louder than 60. Because math. I totally passed math, for real. Hey, Naruto ended this past week. Like, Naruto Forever ended. Like, the show, the last episode ever happened. And it was mostly flashbacks. Place these in order in terms of how strong these signals are. Mic, instrument, line, speaker. Good. So mic level is the least amount of vibration. Instrument level has a little bit more power to the signal. Then line level is the kind of level that all digital things want to hear and send from. And then speaker level is the level that a speaker puts out. So it's a lot of power because it has to physically move a magnet. Good. Mic, instrument, line, speaker. And then name 3 mic transducer types. 1. Ribbon. Yes. 2. Condenser. 3. Dynamic. Good. And what about 5 patterns?
Cardioid.
Cardioid is 1. Hypercardioid is 2. Shotgun is 3. Omni is 4. Figure 8 is 5. Good. And when working with a voice actor, you should never what? Never give them the read. Never read them the line the way you want to hear it. It is offensive. It is telling them how to do their job. Let them do their job. What a great, I have so many good gifts this week. Man, I'm so good at this. What kind of synths have we discussed? So talking about synthesizer types. Wavetable is 1. FM is 2. Sample is 3. Additive is another. And subtractive is the last one. Yes, additive, subtractive, sample, FM, and wavetable. What does an oscillator do? It's a hard question. It's kind of a loaded question. All right, how about this? What part of the synthesizer is the oscillator? The one that generates the sound. So the oscillator is the thing that generates a signal. An oscillator generates a signal or a wave. And it might be one of these, 5 basic waveforms. Can you name for me 5 basic waveforms?
Square.
1 is square. Sawtooth is 2. Triangle is 3. Pulse is 4. And sine is 5. Sine wave, pulse wave, square wave, sawtooth wave, and triangle wave. What is an LFO? Low frequency oscillator. Good. It makes the sound lower than human hearing. Please remember this because it is such a low frequency that we do not hear it. It only is used to affect other signals. It's like 2 times per second instead of the 400 times that an oscillator we hear would have. Okay, this is going to be about signal chain. What does ADSR stand for? Attack, decay, sustain, release. Attack, decay, sustain, release. Please know these. Don't just know how to recognize them. If you were to like be on a test and it said like ADSR, be able to fill in the blank after it. Yeah. What does MIDI stand for? Musical. Okay, musical, instrument, digital, interface. Musical, instrument, digital, interface. So, MIDI notes are just data. There is no sound that is transferred in MIDI. You can edit anything about a performance afterwards. You can edit what note it is, how fast they happen, how long they exist for, whatever you want. MIDI data is completely editable after the fact. Name what some MIDI messages might be. Note on and note off. Nothing, okay. Pitch up, pitch down. You might have modulation. You might have volume. You might have pedal up and down. You might have a bunch of stuff. You can have a whole bunch of different MIDI messages. What I have here for you as examples are note on, note off, sustain pedal, pitch bend, velocity, and modulation. What is velocity again? How fast / how hard you press a note. So usually, most synthesizers will interpret low velocity as low volume, but it is not always the case. Low velocity on a very fancy sample synth might be what's called piano, so a soft delivery of a note, which is not necessarily quiet. Just something to put in your brain. A whole bunch of music stuff. We talked about this last week. I don't know what I wanted to say about this slide, so I'm just going to say, hey, review this slide. Next. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G exist as natural notes in what 2 scales? There is one major scale and one minor scale. C major and A natural minor. That is correct. What is a motif? What's a motif? Okay, it's about forming associations. I'm looking for something a little more specific about a short musical idea. And it can be a melody, it can be a harmony, it could be a rhythm, or all 3, or any combination. It can be basically any audio thought that you associate with something else. It's actually funny. I was talking to my friend on the phone this morning, and we got talking about opera for some reason, and then I got on a big rant about Wagner again. I love Wagner. Oh, what? Spoilers, Wagner. What's an ostinato? Ostinato. A what?
I forget. I'm busy writing notes.
Something that repeats.
Something that repeats, yeah. So it is a continually repeated phrase or rhythm. So we looked at, that was not, we weren't looking at Lord of the Rings. We looked at Bolero, which was the one with the guy with the really tiny baton, where the snare drum beat was there throughout the entire song. So it's the da 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 da. Yeah, and that beat carries through the entire piece. That's an ostinato rhythm.
Can you go back?
Yeah, this is also on Slate if you.
Yeah, that's cheating. I guess that's
Okay, we're gonna wait for Dylan. Is that your name, by the way? Your name is Dylan? Yeah.
What is this? Disrespect. Yes.
Okay, good. I've only called you by that like 4 times today so far.
Today.
Yeah. I guess I should suppose if I had gotten your name wrong by now, you would have said something.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good now?
You can continue.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so this, I believe, is the part where we get into things you have not yet learned. So this GIF is from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and it's where the king is running across, and he's like on his horse, and there's a guy with the coconuts making the like horse sound. Actually, I did a children's short film this past summer where there was like a horse, and basically the rocking horse turns into a real horse at one point, and all the sound effects for the horses running was just me on my leg going like, in like the ADR. It was great. It was so good. Anyway, so what does post-production audio mean? Anyone want to take a guess?
It's audio that you would make after you release whatever to exfoliate it, kind of.
So the simple answer is making sound after the cameras have stopped rolling. So we get a lot of our terminology from the film world. So with when it says after the cameras have stopped rolling, it's like you record stuff when you're doing the actual acting part, right? But not all the sound you get at that point is good sound that you want to go into the movie. A lot of stuff gets replaced. So post-production audio is all that process of replacing audio afterward.
A video of Hugh Jackman doing it for Logan.
Yes.
When he's running in the forest.
That's right.
All those grunts were like hidden.
So that's called ADR, which is like 2 points from now. So I'm going to get back to that Logan idea. What is Foley? So we know what Foley is in terms of like when we put it in a game. Does anyone know what the word Foley, where it comes from? You have your hand up? Okay. Yeah?
Well, it's like when you kind of make sounds, I guess artificially, you try and produce the sounds yourself and things you want.
Right. You artificially try and replace sounds. So it's a process of recording new real-world sounds for interactions. And next week when I give my lecture on this, you'll see a lot of example of how Foley works and post-production audio in more detail. But you can use this as review in 2 weeks because time travel. What is ADR? I'll give you a hint. ADR is that thing that Hugh Jackman was doing in the Logan video. The A is not audio. It's a red herring there. A is advanced. How about that? The R is for replacement. Advanced dialogue replacement. So ADR is the acronym we use to talk about anyone re-recording their voice for something after it's been done. So we were talking about Lord of the Rings last week. Most of the voice in Lord of the Rings is actually ADR. So they acted it out, and then they went into a sound studio after and redid their voices because the environments that they recorded in were not ideal, or they wanted a better take, et cetera, et cetera. The visuals were good, the audio was not. They redid the audio. There's an entire job, an entire like full-time job of a person who works in film and games and whatever, whose job is to work with those vocal takes and line them up with picture. That is their entire job. An ADR technician. Yeah, ADR. I'm going to go into it next week. So Foley is divided into what? 3 categories: footsteps, cloth, and props. We'll talk about that later. Oh man, I didn't remove the Mitomo jokes from last year. No. What are library effects? They are sound effects that you get from a library. So a sound library is a collection of sounds. They are usually difficult to produce or dangerous to produce. Example being an explosion or glass breaking or a gun firing. You're not going to just go and record that yourself, probably. You will usually use a library sound for that. Now you can also use library sounds for things like footsteps and birds and whatever else. That's more on the it's too difficult to produce yourself if you don't have access to microphones or birds, etc. But most of the time, when you're working on your own audio, you want to create original sounds because you don't want to sound like anything else. But there is sort of a tipping point between quality and convenience versus originality. So I leave that to your decision. What is a bus? Oh, we're back to buses.
It's a collection of audio channels.
Collection of audio channels, like a folder. Yes. Good. What is the transport?
It's the thing with like play, fast forward, like
The thing with the buttons on it, yes. It is the part of the DAW with buttons for controls like play, stop, fast forward, rewind, etc. And joke from last year, forget it. Yeah, it was how many friends do you have on Mitomo? The answer was too many. Did any of you play Mitomo last year? Do you remember what that is?
Yeah.
Anyone remember what Pokemon Go is?
Yeah.
I barely remember what Pokemon Go is.
People still play it.
Old people play it all the time.
Okay.
You walk in, I'm just like, your battery life though.
Yeah, so old people do still play Pokemon Go. There's a guy in my neighborhood who has like an assistive walking device, like a scooter, basically, like a big red scooter. And his thing he does during the day is he just like scooters around my neighborhood, but he's holding his phone playing Pokemon Go on his scooter. So he just does the rounds from like one gym to the next gym to the next gym. And he just keeps going in a circle. And by the time he gets back to like the first point, it's like reset. So he like gets more Pokeballs. Yeah, old dude on a scooter. It's great. So Fmod, how does it work? So today we are going to learn about some Fmod stuff. Don't pay attention to this link because I think this link is dead. Yes, that video is unavailable. If you want this tutorial, it's actually from Fmod C# tutorial. It is from this page, fmod.org/getting-started Fmod Unity Basic C scripting. Obviously dead video link, but there's a transcription here, and there's an explanation of how to include one-shot sounds and how to do a ball rolling sound with an active parameter, and how to do music. Cool. So if you want to know how to do the thing that you have to do for your Fmod project, highly recommend just using this tutorial to get you to that finish line. Just sub out ball rolling for like character running. Try it out. Anyway, today I'm going to show you how, recording myself. I'm going to show you how to set up some simple stuff in Fmod. So why don't you all open up Fmod, as well as Unity, and I'm going to get you to download from Slate. There is a file called Fmod Studio 10800_v2. You'll need to download that file because that is a Unity package that will open Fmod abilities. It basically opens Fmod as a plugin in Unity. Similar to last time we did a Unity tutorial together, I'd like you to, when you build a new project, include the character assets from standard assets. I'm going to work offline. New project. So we're going to call this Fmod tutorial, because why not? It's a 3D. I'm going to add an asset package of characters, like I said. Done. Create. And for those of you who have trouble keeping up with this, I'm going to post this video also to your sections group. So those of you listening in the future, ignore what I'm about to say. All of those of you who are here right now, you'll be able to see this again in the future using Slate. Yeah, characters. Because we're going to drop a third-person character into our scene, but that's in a couple steps. Also, so if you missed what I said, make sure you download the Fmod Studio download Unity package from Slate. I like to use the 2x3 layout. Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to do a couple things here. We're going to create a new folder for scenes, and we're going to create a new folder for textures, and we're going to import Fmod. So I download this file, I click it, Unity tries to open it. I can import everything from that asset package. So I'm also going to quickly save my scene as that scene in the scenes folder so I don't lose any of my work. So once you open that Fmod Unity package, it's actually going to allow you to have this Fmod fancy drop-down menu here. If you don't have this Fmod drop-down menu, you did something wrong, or the computer did something wrong. Please shout out now if you did not get to this far. OK. I will wait for another few seconds. But when you go to this menu and you go to Edit Settings, it opens up something in the inspector over here, which will allow you to see your studio project path. So we don't currently have a studio project path because we don't have a studio project. So let's open up Fmod. And I'm not going to open the example project. First thing I'm going to do, and this is a really important step, is File, Save As, fmod tutorial, whatever. And I'm going to save it in the, so I saved fmod tutorial as a Unity project in my documents here. I'm saving this in the same folder, just so I know where to find it. You need to know where to find your fmod save file. So fmod tutorial bank business, whatever, save. OK, so now if I go back to Unity, I can hit, so I went fmod, edit settings. In the inspector, you can see there's a project path. I can browse and open the fmod project. It's got the cool little fmod logo. You're basically connecting your two projects at this point. So you save your fmod project in a folder somewhere where you know where it is, probably the assets folder. And then you need to studio project path, browse, and then find, there's going to be a folder there, so you have to open the folder, and then find the fmod project. And now they're connected. Now you see that there's an error here. It says fmod studio project does not contain any built data. So what happens here is that fmod does a whole bunch of fancy stuff. And Unity doesn't care what that stuff is. It just says, fmod, you do your thing. Fmod packages up all the fancy stuff that it does into what's called a sound bank. And then when Unity says, play this event, do this thing, whatever, it's actually the sound bank where it gets all of its information from. So if you have a whole bunch of sounds in fmod that you're not using and you build the bank, it's actually not going to include the sounds you're not using because it's not there. It doesn't matter. So let's build a bank of sounds. Let's do the simplest thing we can. So in the events window on the left-hand side, let's right-click, new event, and we're going to call it footsteps. Now we need to find a footstep sound effect. Actually, I think I might have put it into this audio test assets file. Let me see if that's true. Oh, yeah! Amazing. OK, in Slate, in week 12, there is a test audio assets.zip file. It contains 7 footstep sound effects. So we're going to use those sound effects. Let's start with wood. So I'm going to select, I have to extract this, or it's not going to work. Yes, extract. Good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 4 wood sound effects. I'm going to actually select all of them and drag them together onto the timeline. So that does what's called, it creates a multi-sound. So a multi-sound is like a bucket of sounds. And when you trigger, it's a pretty excellent bucket. I see your eyes burning a hole in my excellent bucket. Don't be coy, my friend. I've heard that so many hundreds of times. You have no idea how many times I have heard all the lines from that thing. So in this multi-sound, you can see there's no waveform data on the actual, I don't know why I'm pointing with my hand on the screen when I can use the mouse. You can see there's no actual waveform data on this thing. If I was to pull just a straight up sound like this onto the timeline, you can see there's actually waveform data on that sound effect. And if I hit play, you hear the sound effect. Well, a multi-sound is a folder of a bunch of sounds. So those of you who are behind me right now, I went and downloaded that file. I selected all 4 wood sound effects. I dragged them onto my timeline, and it created a multi-sound, which now holds 4 sound effects in it. Is that a question over there? Or did that answer it?
It's just one, I can't drag them onto the timeline.
You have to extract the folder. Is that the problem?
Probably.
Hopefully. So there is a single sound that you can pull in onto your timeline, and you can see the waveform. You can see the waveform of it. Or there is a multi-sound, which contains multiple sounds. So this is how, when we hit play, it chooses I'm just hitting enter over and over again. chooses at random one of these 4 sounds. Pretty cool. So if we want to add even more randomization to that, we can do that. What we want to do is add what's called modulation. So in the same way that an LFO can modulate a synthesizer sound, we can add modulation to these sound effects. So if you, down here you click on the multi-sound, and down here you see volume and pitch. If I hit play, and I move this volume down, it gets quieter, right? What I can do is tell the engine, play this at a random volume. The way I do that, I right-click on this volume, I say add modulation, and I say random. How did I get to this? You click on multi-sound, and then it's at the bottom.
No, my sound's actually not playing at all.
You might have the wrong audio device. So those of you who are not hearing sound currently, you would go to Edit, Preferences, and then under Audio, you can change Wasapi to Direct Sound or Direct Sound to Wasapi. They should both work. And then your audio output device will be here. For me, it's Crestron because I'm playing it through the speakers, but for you, it might be headphones.
And that crashed.
No, it's back.
What?
It didn't crash. You're good. And now do you have sound? Good. All right. Troubleshot. So now mine crashed. So if I hit, oh yeah, I was doing randomization. So I click on multi-sound. I've got these 4 sounds down here. I can right-click volume, say add modulation, and say random. That gives me this little fader dealy over here on the right. That can tell me how much I want to randomize the volume by. I can say by 12 dB, by 14 dB. I'm going to make it like 1 or 2 dB, just so there's a, well, I'm going to make it larger so that we hear the example. But here how the volume is randomized. I'll show you again in a second. So some of them are loud, some of them are quiet. Cool. What you might consider doing in the case of footsteps is hooking up your velocity with the volume so that if the foot hits the ground faster, then the sound is louder. If it hits slower, then it would be quieter, but we're not going to deal with that today. We're just going to make a bunch of sound effects. So what I did was I right-clicked on volume, I went into add modulation, and I checked random. That opened a random modulator on the right side where I can set how much it is randomized by. To sound good, I'm going to put it at about 3 dB. I'm also going to randomize the pitch. So how would I do that? I can right-click pitch, go to modulation, add random modulation. And so I can randomize by 1 semitone or by a whole bunch of semitones. And that sounds pretty weird when it gets to be a lot. Here, like really all over the place the pitch is. But it's setting a random pitch when I hit the button, when I trigger the event, and it's maintaining that pitch for the entire audio event. So that's good. So I'm only going to set it to like maybe 5 semitones, maybe 6. And it'll sound like half decent. Pretty good. OK, so now we have 4 footstep sound effects that are sounding like something. And they're randomizing the volume. And they're randomizing the pitch. So we're going to avoid sound effect fatigue with our footsteps on wood. This is good. Let's try and put that into Unity. The first thing we need to do, and don't forget this step, is right-click on your footsteps event and assign it to a bank. Remember, Fmod and Unity only talk via sound banks. So you need to assign this to the master bank, like that. If you do that correctly, after footsteps, it will not say unassigned. If your footsteps event says unassigned, you're missing a step. Right-click, assign to bank, master bank. Now we're going to file save, and also most importantly, file build. This is what will create the sound bank Unity pulls from. If you don't create your bank or update your bank, then Unity won't have updated sounds. If you're making changes in Fmod and you're like, why isn't this changing in Unity? It's because you haven't built your bank. So Control-Alt-B or File Build. Very important step. Now, back over into Unity, we can see that it's not complaining to me anymore that there are no events. The bank has an event. This is good. So things we need in this scene to work. We need a main camera, we need a directional light. The main camera, we need to remove the audio listener because we're not using built-in audio, we're using fmod audio. So audio listener, remove component, you're gone. We are going to add a component that is fmod, so just search for fmod. You'll see that there are 4 prefab scripts that you can pull from. The one we're going to pull from is fmod studio listener. So we've replaced on the main camera the audio listener with an fmod studio listener. Is that a question or a head scratch? Head scratch. Good. Now, let's make some stuff. Create, not empty. I didn't want that. Create 3D object cube. I'm going to make it 5150. That's a good ground. I'm going to call this some ground. Ground. And I'm going to tag my ground. I'm going to make a new tag. Everyone familiar with tags? Hopefully. So I made a tag called wood. And now the ground is going to be tagged as wood. So it's wooden ground. It doesn't look like wooden ground. So let's make some wooden ground. I'm just going to Google search wood texture on Google image search. Yep, this one's good. I'm going to pull that one. Save image as, documents, fmod tutorial, assets. I made a thing called textures. Save. This is not an important step, but it's a fun step. So I like the fun steps. I'm just going to drag the texture onto the ground. Now the ground looks like wood and sounds like wood. Almost. Let's make another 3D object. It's going to be a cube. That cube, we want to make sure it is off the ground. I'm going to pull it a little closer to our camera. The box collider for this, I'm going to make it a trigger. And I'm going to add a component to it that is an fmod studio event emitter. Everyone's with me so far? So I made a cube on top of some ground. The ground has a box collider. That doesn't matter. The cube is going to be our equivalent of a foot. And it's going to have a studio event emitter script on it. So the play event is going to be trigger enter. The stop event will not exist. The collision tag is going to be with wood. And the event is going to be footsteps. That's all we need to do. So the sound effect is going to play when it enters, when the trigger enters. It's not going to stop because it's a one-shot event. The collision event type is tag is wood, and then that's all we have to do. The event has to be footsteps. Now, when I run the game, if everything has been done the way that I thought it should be, it's not doing it. Awesome. Yeah. What did I do wrong? Box collider is trigger. This is going to look really good on my recording.
Yeah, does it need a visual body?
It doesn't usually. Maybe I didn't build my bank.
No, mine's not working either.
Okay, let's do this the way that I know works. So delete your cube, forget about that. Screw that cube. Let's go to our standard assets and characters, third person, prefabs, and we're going to pull in a third person character prefab. Closer to the camera. Where's the camera?
You needed a rigid body.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay, it needs a rigid body. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach our third person camera to our third person controller. I'm going to make it sort of look okay. And I want my rotation to be down a bit. And I want to be a little bit further forward. I'm parenting making the camera a child of the third person controller. The third person controller is in standard assets / characters / third person / prefabs, and it's the third person prefab, not the AI one. So when I hit play, I should have a character that can run around. Really simple stuff. Character runs around on wood. Is anyone confused at this point? I know I just messed up and I'm continuing, but no questions? Good. So I'm just going to look down through this skeleton of the dude. I'm going to go to his right leg, his right foot, his right toe, and there's a toe. I'm going to make a new 3D object, cube. I'm going to make the size 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, and I'm going to parent that to that toe. So now, there's like a thing on his foot. I'm going to make that a trigger. I'm going to make an event emitter and do the same thing I did before. Play on trigger enter, collision tag with wood, event, footsteps, and that's good. I did it. So, I couldn't get it to work that way. So for the people listening to the recording who didn't just hear Jen's voice, couldn't you just put the sound emitter right on the toe? I think you could, but it has to do with the way the collider works. So I want to have control over the box collider. I'm basically just, once this works the way I want it to, I'm going to get rid of the mesh renderer, and then it'll look like it's not there. And it'll just make sound as it runs around. So you can see that it's only happening with my right foot. I'm going to make a copy of this cube, go to the left foot, and put it there. And then just like that, now I have a collider on both feet. And we've got randomized footsteps sounding like they're on wood with running around. Fmod, ladies and gentlemen. So that's step one. Randomized footsteps, triggering them via collision. Yes. The box slider has to be trigger on the box.
I did this thing and I also did over here, right? Trigger.
Trigger. Event.
Right.
Trigger enter. Stop event. Wood.
Yeah.
And this is tagged as wood.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Oh,
You got it.
I had that too.
Okay. So just make sure that your box collider is small, because if it's already, like if it's a 1 by 1 by 1 unit, it's not going to enter and exit collision. It's just going to live there, and it'll just always be trigger enter. Okay. So that works. We know how to trigger a thing via collision. That's great. And we can randomize what that's going to sound like. You're now Fmod developers. We can all go home. Yes, very good. Let's make this a little bit more complicated. Yep, we're going there. So I'm going to take this, this wooden ground. Yes? Before I continue.
So mine is working, but it's kind of weird. Like when I start the game, it takes like 5 seconds of nothing happening. Then I hear a bunch of foot sounds, steps, spam all at once, and then it works after that.
Like a lag kind of thing?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, it's
Like,
it's La La Land.
like so it's working now, right? Can you?
Yeah,
But so let's see if it does it again. It's probably not going to do it now that I'm showing you, but let's see.
hopefully.
So there's nothing. And
That
now
is
it's
super weird. I do not get why that happened. Click on the cube for me really quick. Trigger, enter, none, wood, footsteps. Go advanced controls, just show me what that looks like. I don't know what's going on with that. It's some kind of lag.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'll come and loop back and help you with this after I finish this tutorial. So let's say that you don't only have wood as one type of ground in your game, because you probably don't. So let's make this smaller. I'm going to make it 20 by 20. And I'm going to make a copy of it. And I'm going to make this a different kind of tag. It's going to be, what did I say? Grass was the other one? So it's going to be grass. It's going to be tagged as grass. And I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to go get myself a grass texture from the Goog. Whoops. Grass texture. This looks like a good grass texture. Save image as grass-free texture. Over to Unity. Where's my textures folder? Drag that onto the grass. And now we've got, in our little world, our guy can run around. And now, because that ground is not tagged as wood, those footstep sounds don't happen. We all get why that's happening? So now we need to give it a reason to make sound on the grass texture. So what do we do? Well, we're going to use a parameter for this because we don't want to make multiple footstep events. We want to make adaptations of the same footstep event. So back over in Fmod, clicking on footsteps, I'm actually going to create a new parameter. So this little plus button for the tab here, create new parameter, add parameter. I'm going to call this ground types. It's going to be a float between 0 and 1. 0 and 1. So instead of triggering all my sounds no matter what happens, I'm going to trigger my sounds based on the parameter. So I'm actually going to copy this and then delete it from my timeline, and I'm going to paste it over here as something that happens when the parameter is at 0. Remember, timeline, the x-axis is time. Ground types, the x-axis is actually the parameter. So right now it's a float between 0 and 1. So if the parameter is set to 0, this will be true. Okay, so if I go back to the, well, I have to save and then build. If I play this, it's still going to work. And it's not going to work on the grass because the parameter is set to 0. So how do I change that parameter? Well, first things first, I'm going to show you in Fmod how to add another thing. So I'm going to go back to my folder of test audio assets, selecting my 3 grass sound effects, and I'm going to drag them onto the ground types tab, and I'm going to set them up at 0.5. So as long as the parameter is set to 0.5, then I'm going to, I don't think I set that up quite right. I don't think it's zoomed in enough. Stop it. There, okay. So now if I'm at 0.5, and I play, this is so annoying. There. Save, build. So now timeline is actually empty. When you trigger the event, the timeline won't do anything. But depending on the ground types, if it's the parameter is set to 0 or the parameter is set to 0.5, a different sound effect will play. So back over in Unity, I'm going to change what it's looking for. So I'm going to look at this event emitter. I'm just going to duplicate it. Before I do that, sorry, ground types checkbox 0. So click on one of the cubes on the feet, one of the triggers. And then under the studio event emitter, you're going to look at the initial parameter values, open it up, and set ground types to 0. Because if, over here in Fmod, if ground type is 0, then the sound will be wood. If ground type is 0.5, sound will be grass. So over here, I need the sound type to be 0 for wood. I'm going to copy this component and paste new. Now, if the collision is with grass, so I'm changing collision tag from wood to grass, ground type's parameter needs to be 0.5. Doing the same on the other foot. Oh, I hit remove. That was not my best work. Copy component and paste component as new. So what I did was I created a second studio event emitter. It is trigger enter, collision type grass instead of wood, and then my ground types is set to 0.5 on the parameter. So if in fmod I saved and build, go over into Unity, I'm going to save for fun, and then hit play, I'm walking on wood, and now it's not working. Yeah. I think I have my timeline just askew, which is not good. So it needs to collide with this multi-sound box. So you can set this up as like a range of things. So I'm just going to make sure that 0.5 has it in the box. So let's go back, build, run it again. We did it. So that is way too loud. All I have to do is go over here and make this multi-sound volume lower. So I put just like minus 6 dB, save, goodbye friends, hit build, go to Unity, hit run. Like that. One thing that I forgot to do with this new multi-sound is add the randomization. So add the modulation of pitch and volume. So I click on this multi-sound, right-click volume, add modulation, random. I'm going to add a randomization of about 5 dB. And then right-click pitch, add modulation, add randomization, about 5 semitones. Sure, 6 works too. Save, file, build, go over here, and run. Has everyone been able to get that to work? No.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, some people have not. So I've seen a couple people have had problems with some lag. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I'm going to come around and help out with that once I'm done with the tutorial. Secondly, if the sound effect is, are you using the same sounds as me? Because sometimes there's a silence at the beginning of a sound effect. And because it triggers and it has this silence here, it will be delayed. It also has to do with where your trigger cube is placed on the foot. If it's placed really far ahead on the toe, it might be early. And if it's placed really far back on the heel, it might also be early. Depends on how the model animates. OK, so that's how you trigger one event. So we made the footsteps event. Let's say you wanted like a music event. So new event, music, or spell it right this time. I don't think I put... Oh, you know what? Let's not do music. Let's do... what did I make that sound effect? Stream? Great. We're going to make it water. OK, and we're going to, first thing we do is assign this to the master bank so that we don't lose it when we try to listen to it. I'm going to pull the stream loop into this thing. And then, because this is a looping sound, we need to add a looping event. So I made a new event, called it water. I assigned it to master bank. I pulled the stream loop in. I want to right-click and add loop region. And you need to line that region up with your loop. Alternatively, you can right-click and say new loop region on that file, and it will make it exactly the length of that audio file. So right-click, add new loop region. Now when I hit play on this event, so loud. No, stop forever. I'm going to make this like way quieter and then hit play. That's better. Good. So that's a good loop that will pretty much go forever. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to place it in 3D space because we want things like ambiances, right, in our projects. So let's make a stream water texture. This feels like the kind of sound we're listening to. Save image as water texture. I'm going to go back into Unity, create new 3D. Let's make it a cube as well, because cubes are fun. I'm going to make the z-axis 20. Nope, wrong axis. 1. We're going to make the scale on the x-axis 20, and we're going to put it just above like that. And I'm going to apply the water texture to it. I'm going to make this look a little bit better just for fun. Tiling on the y-axis can be higher. No, other way. X-axis. That looks like water, right? Oh, I did all that when I was hit play. Ah, rookie mistake. Rookie mistake. Do all your work again. Now we're going to make this water, and I'm going to make the X tiling higher. Oh, that is not, what? Tiling. Yeah. So now in my scene, there's like water over here, right? It's a stream, it's beautiful. It's so nice. So I'm going to call this stream, and I'm going to put it over in the water, because that seems more natural. And for fun, I'm going to loop my dude around. Okay. So this stream, I'm going to give it an fmod emitter, as you might have assumed. Add component, fmod studio emitter. I'm going to play on level start. There is no stop event, and the event I'm calling from, I didn't build. So back in fmod, save, file, build, gets you every time. Now when I look for the event, water. So it is not a one-shot. It says one-shot false because there is a looping event on that event. Now, when I hit play, it's a 3D sound. It's got an emitter on it. As you walk away from it, you don't hear it. So, yeah, that's a 3D sound generation thing. It's not much you can do about it.
So is that Unity or is that?
That's fmod. Yeah, you can change a little bit about that stuff in some advanced properties, but I don't want to get into that. Yes, so about changing ranges and stuff like that, you're going to want to do that on the fmod side. So I was looking in the event view, but you want to look in the banks view. So switch over to the banks tab. When you click on water, and then at the bottom it'll say distance attenuation. So you can say minimum and maximum distance here. So you can make it heard from very far away or heard from only very close. You can make the sound size change. You can change your attenuation curve to linear or whatever you want, some sort of weird custom thing. And then you can hear what that sounds like by previewing. So it's the events tab we were in. You want to go to the banks tab. Then when you click on water, you can do your distance stuff. You don't have the events banks tab, and then click on it.
The curve and stuff.
The 3D panner. So click out of everything. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording because this is all I wanted to record for everything. So goodbye, people of the future. Hello, people of the present past. Thank you all. This has been Robbie Duguay recording forever.